and necessary, or the question is whether we do, really have universal and necessary knowledge a priori that is synthetic. That is to say, that adds to the meaning of the terms. Is it possible to have factual knowledge, knowledge of matters of fact, a priori? That's the issue. Well, wasn't that his project to ask that? Is metaphysics possible on an a priori basis? Metaphysics would involve synthetic knowledge, knowledge of facts about reality. So this is the kind of conceptual apparatus that he's developing for that in mind. Now, to pin this down a little bit, look, would you, at page 369. 369. Top of the second column. Those of you who did not bring the anthology, you'll need it throughout Kant. Okay? And forever thereafter. 369, second column at the top. My question is, what can we hope to achieve with reason when all the material and assistance of experience is taken away? Independently of experience, what can we achieve? A priori knowledge. Okay. Then halfway down that column, he says there are two essential demands addressed to an author who ventures on this undertaking. First, with regards to certainty, okay, and halfway through that paragraph he says every kind of knowledge that professes to be certain a priori proclaims that it means to be taken for absolutely necessary. Absolutely necessary. Pure knowledge a priori, which is the measure of all apodictic philosophical certainty. Apodictic? Yes, proven, demonstrable, logically necessary. And over on 371, very bottom of the second column, general truths which bear the character of inward necessity must be independent of experience, clear, certain to themselves. They're therefore called knowledge a priori. But notice he calls them general truths. You see, they have the logically universal form. All. Yeah. Not just some, not just local, but all. So universal and necessary are criteria involved in the a priori. And at the top of 372, halfway through that first, well, 6 lines into that first paragraph, even if we remove from experience everything that belongs to the senses, there remain certain original concepts and judgments derived from them, which must have had their origin entirely a priori, independent of all experience. So pretty evident what he's after. And at the top of 373, first column, he gives an illustration from mathematics, and I'll leave you to play with that. Okay. The phrase synthetic a priori is introduced on 374. Synthetic a priori, 374, second column, the top. In synthetic judgments a priori, okay, empirical help is wanting. If I want to go beyond the concept A to find another concept B, where is there anything on which I may rest and through which a synthesis A and B might become possible? Considering I cannot have the advantage of looking about in the field of experience. Take the proposition, and here's Hume's crucial one. The proposition that all which happens has its cause. Take that. In the concept of something that happens, I no doubt conceive of something existing preceded by time, and from this certain analytic judgments may be deduced, but the concept of cause is outside that. Yeah, I undoubtedly have the idea of something preceding. Sure, conjunctions, regularities, constant conjunctions. Yeah, he agrees with Hume, we have that, all right. But we have no concept of cause. This indicates something different from just what happens, and it's not contained in the representation of what happens. So, how about the cause-effect connection? Okay. Any questions, comments? Okay, transcendental method. And you notice that in that context the term transcendental is used several times. I call knowledge transcendental, he says on 375, that's occupied not with objects but with a priori concepts. And that's a pretty good definition. Don't confuse transcendental with transcendent. Now, if you think like a theologian thinks, the word transcendental immediately triggers the thought of a God out there somewhere. You see. A God who transcends this creation and acts, as it were, from outside it. Transcendent. The term transcendental doesn't mean anything of the sort. Now, if you think not like a theologian, but like somebody in American literature, you're familiar with the term transcendentalism, where the term transcendental does not refer to something out there, but something in here and under here and around here and pervading all. You see, American transcendentalism was the view that the human spirit is a creative, expressive power, but not confined to me. It's the creative spirit throughout things that operates in and through my creative spirit. Sort of a panentheism, you see. In that every human soul, mind, spirit participates in this world spirit. You get that in Emerson. Transcendentalism. Transcendentalism was the American version of German Romanticism in the 19th century, with its pantheistic or panentheistic tendency. Now, the point is, and incidentally, there wouldn't have been any transcendentalism or romanticism apart from Kant. He's the philosophical transition that made that possible. He had the term before they did. They just stole it. Well, borrowed it. Went to, piggybacked on it. But you see, if you then have the notion of transcendentalism, you can work back to the seed of that idea in what Kant is talking about. He's talking about the inner resources of the human spirit, the inner resources of the human mind. What is it that reason brings a priori to the quest for knowledge? And the transcendental method is the method at getting at these inner resources that the human mind brings. That's why I say, forget for a moment the notion of a transcendent. Not out there, but in here is where transcendental focuses. So if we say then that critical philosophy is an attempt to critique the tradition, you see, by asking what are the resources that the mind brings a priori, then obviously the transcendental method is the method you want. The method of getting at those inner resources. You see. Are there certain universal presuppositions which every human being brings to the quest for knowledge? You see, that's the kind of question he's asking. Except that presupposition seems to imply some theory, some proposition, something more than what Kant's thinking about, which is a concept. Are there any universal concepts? Now, having said that, be careful. Because he's not talking about what we've learned to think of since Plato as innate ideas. No. An innate idea is a pre-formed idea that's already in your mind and you can recollect with. Or in Descartes' language, an innate idea is something which is self-evident, which pops up in the mind, clear and distinct. You see? It's sort of a prefabricated idea that you've already got. But the kind of a priori concept that Kant is after is not a full-blown concept. It's not a clear idea. It's not something self-evident. It's more of a blueprint. Or more of the framework for your thinking. It's more of a grid through which you will sift what comes, or a mold into which you will pour experience. You see. Now, my usual illustration of this, some of you have heard, is of an ice cube tray with those neat dividers, and you pour the water in, and lo and behold, after a while, it comes out with nice, pretty cubes. You can get a handle on those. Sort of hard to hold the water in your hand. J. Woods, I think, is of a crazy putty. Play-Doh, yeah, a Play-Doh thing where you squeeze the Play-Doh out through the thing into all sorts of pretty animal shapes. Well, you can think of it as a cookie syringe, making Christmas cookies, squeezing the stuff through the nozzles, and out come all sorts of star-shaped cookies and all sorts of other fancy things. No, it's an a priori structure. You see, a structuring, a framework. Yeah. Change the metaphor. It's as if we have an a priori lens that brings things into focus. Yeah, you're right. Lens. You see. When I shave in the morning, I have my glasses off because they get steamed up. But when it comes to doing the hairs just below the sideburns, I have to put them back on because I can't see what I'm doing. You know, I can go by feel all the rest of the way. But being half as blind as a bat is completely blind, without the glasses, you know, I have to have... Well, you can't know, think, without the lens. You see? It's the sort of thing Kant say. Everybody has the same lens. Go to the dime store and get your specs. No, you don't need to. You come with it already built in. You see? So that it's this a priori structure that he's trying to uncover with the transcendental method.